Every puzzle has at least 3 laws. Morgan says when you consider a puzzle, the first law is that whoever made the puzzle did not start with the pieces. He started with the portrait. It is your task and job to put the pieces together to match the puzzle. I told him that Morgan says the second law of a puzzle is that where there are no extra pieces, no matter how difficult it is for you to put the puzzle together, everything that you need to fulfill the task is right there at your disposal. He was a little older. I would have told my son, Miss Doris Jean, that the third law to every puzzle is that every uneven piece fits somewhere. The only reason why it does not fit is because you got it in the wrong place. The truth, my brothers and sisters, is some of us feel like our life is torn in pieces. But it's important to understand that when your life is in shambles, every minute piece of your life is all a part of the big picture. And some of us, just like my son, we get frustrated when we're trying to piece the pieces together and we quit working on the puzzle. But we must understand that when we quit working on the puzzle, then our portrait will never be complete. I wish I had somebody in there. On the contrary, my beloved, if we just hang on in there, no matter how jacked up and asymmetrical the pieces look, if we just hang on in there, no matter how long and time consuming it is for us to put the pieces together, if we just hang on in there, no matter how many people are waiting and watching for us to fall, if we just hang on in there, our testimony will soon become of us 2 words: it worked. Tell somebody it worked. Is there anybody here on a Wednesday night that can testify? I've had some rough patches in my life. I've had some hot summers and I've had some cold winters. I've had some seas that I've had to swim and some hills that I've had to climb. But when I look back over my life, I can testify that all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. Come on, help me preach my sermon and high five your neighbor for the first time and say it worked. The lies that they told on me, it didn't work for them, but it worked for me. The harm that they plotted against me, it didn't work for them, but it worked for me. The scheme that the enemy tried to plan against me didn't work for him, but it worked for me. And now I can testify like Joseph, what the enemy meant for my evil, turn it around for my good. I don't mean to be nosy, but can I ask, is there anybody here that can testify I didn't think it was going to work? But good God for mine, when I look back over my life, the mess that I thought was going to take me out, God turned it around for me. Can I tell y'all why I'm preaching this? It's the book of Romans, Paul's letter to the church at Rome. I like it because Romans is where we get a significant portion of Christian doctrine. Paul, my brothers and sisters, never gets the chance to go visit the church at Rome, but he wrote this letter and gave them a course on systematic theology. Yeah, it's a letter where he teaches them about the doctrine of sin. Yeah, he teaches them about the doctrine of sin. Paul says, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but you are a sinner. Paul says, I am a sinner. He says, the pagan is guilty of sin, and those who think they are moral and religious are also guilty of sin. He says, the law doesn't make you clean, because when you break one portion of the law, you've broken every piece of the law. As a matter of fact, he says in chapter 3 that all have sinned. I'm saying a Bible reader here. He says, all have sinned and come up the glory of God. Come on, tell somebody, say, I'm guilty. Yeah, I know I look good with my tie and my suit on, but the truth is I'm guilty. I know I got a dress on and I got my hat looking nice, but the truth is I'm guilty. I know that I'm preaching this sermon, I'm singing my song, I'm praying my prayer, but the truth is underneath this robe and underneath this collar is a sinner whose righteousness is as dirty rags. But the good thing about it is when I understand that I'm not by myself, because Paul said in this day, even when I desire to do good, evil is always present. And the good that I would do, I never do. And the bad that I said I wasn't going to do, oh Lord, I do so well. How about your neighbor and say, I am guilty? Gotta move fast. He teaches us the doctrine of sin, but he also teaches us the doctrine of justification. Now, if you were quiet about sin, you ought to shout about justification. Because right after he says we all sin and come up short from the glory of God, he immediately follows it up by saying we are justified by grace as a gift through the redemption of Jesus Christ. He says what you've done can't condemn you, and what you will do can't redeem you. I said what you've done can't condemn you, and what you will do can't redeem you. He says the only reason why we're justified is because one Friday evening on a hill that looked like a skull, they took my Jesus and marched him down Judgment Hall to Judgment Hall, and they hung him on an old rugged cross, and they put thorns around his head, and they gave him vinegar to drink, and they put piercing him in his side, and they whipped him all night long until he died. Didn't he die? He died from the 6th to the 9th hour. He died until the earth reeled and rocked like a drunken man. He died until the Roman soldiers said, surely this was the Son of God. But Sunday morning, he got up with all power in the hollow of his hand, and all I got to do is but believe in him, and I'm justified by faith. Romans. I like Romans because it talks about condemnation, the doctrine of sin. It talks about justification, how we get redeemed from sin. But Paul, when he gets to chapter 8, he talks about sanctification. Don't you say sanctification? He talks about how we have life in the Spirit and can endure life through the Spirit. But in doing so, he teaches about sanctification. And sanctification often happens through a season of suffering.
Well.
Hear what I said? So when God doesn't condemn you, and when he justifies you, sometimes how he sanctifies you is through suffering. Paul teaches in the epistle that there is no glorification without sanctification, and there is no sanctification without suffering. Paul teaches that if you want to share in the future glory of Christ, then you are required to share in his sufferings in the right here and the right now. I said, if you want to share in the glory of God in the future, you must also share in the sufferings of Jesus in the right here and right now. Woe to the one that preaches prosperity but omits the doctrine of sanctification through suffering. You mean, preacher, I have to go through heartaches and headaches? You mean, preacher, I gotta get sick and struggle sometimes? You mean I have to be hurt by people that I love? You mean I have to cry sometimes in the midnight hour? Why should I shout, Reverend, if you're telling me that I have to go through suffering? Well, the reason why we can shout during seasons of suffering is because we know. I wish I had a praying church. I said the reason why we can shout during seasons of suffering is because we know that all things work together for tonight that's going through a season of suffering? Yeah. Are you dealing with some same things that are slowing you down, stunning your growth, hindering your praise, and dampening your smile? But if that's not you, this is what you need to do. You need to follow New Hope's YouTube page and bring this sermon out for another time, because no matter who you are or where you're going, you're going to have to suffer sometime. But for those of us that don't mind being real and saying, preacher, I came on my way suffering. I came to church hurting. I came to church crying. I spent all last night worrying about what I'm going to do this week. It's because right now I need a word on how I can handle my season of suffering. How do we do it? Two things. I know a good preacher gives you 3 points, but I only got 2. Give me another chance, I'll give you 3. 2 things. Paul says you can get through your suffering. First of all, if you're willing to anticipate what's coming. Can the church say anticipate what's coming? I try to preach the Bible, y'all. Look at Romans chapter 8, verse 18. Romans chapter 8, verse 18. King James Version says, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present age. Y'all ain't got y'all Bibles open. If y'all had your Bibles open, y'all would be shouting right now. Verse 18 says, for I reckon that the sufferings of this present age are not worthy to be compared from the glory that is to be revealed. Paul says, whatever you're dealing with right now is of no comparison to the glory that's coming. Whatever you're dealing with right now is of no comparison to the glory that's coming. Whatever you're dealing with right now is of no comparison to the glory that's coming. Whatever you're dealing with right now is of no comparison. Some of y'all still see. I said whatever you're dealing with right now is of no comparison to what's coming. He says, life will be so much better if you realize that God has something up his sleeve. And what he has up his sleeve is so great that when you look back when it's all said and done, you will characterize your sufferings as insignificant. Amen. I said God's power, what he has in store for us, is so great that when it's all said and done with, we're going to look back over our life and the little pain that we thought we was dealing with will be insignificant because of the glory that's revealed in our lives. Paul says, and I'm in verse 19, it says the whole world, all of creation, whether they admit it or not, is sitting back waiting to see what God is going to do. He says, in this hope we're saved. In anticipating the glory coming of God, it is in that hope that we're saved. While we're subjected to suffering, our hope is that one day, by and by, God will end our frustration, God will wipe our tears, God will heal our diseases, he will mend our broken hearts. There will be a day when the frailty and the futility will be far removed from us, and we'll be able to testify, Lord, it worked. He paints a picture in verses 19 through 25. I'm paraphrasing here. He paints the picture of a pregnant woman. When a woman is pregnant, in most cases, is 9 months of suffering. 9 months of discomfort. 9 months of mourning sickness. 9 months of back pains and restless nights because you're unable to sleep in the positions that you might be. I wish I had a mother in here. You're unable to sleep in the positions that you're accustomed to sleeping in. But when the baby comes, y'all ain't gonna play with me. When the baby calls your name for the first time, when the baby starts working, when the baby says for the first time, I love you, all the suffering that you endured for the might be delivering something great on the inside of you, and you cannot give up because of the glory was coming. It's better than what you're dealing with. Tell somebody it's working, it's working, it's working, it's working. I'm hurting, but it's working. I'm feeling pain right now, but it's working. I'm getting damaged right now, but it's working. And I know that if I suffer right now, the glory that comes later will be greater than my suffering. I'm done, y'all. Let's go watch Greenleaf. It's because we can get through suffering if we anticipate what's coming. But secondly, watch this. Not only can we get through the suffering by anticipating what's coming, secondly, watch this now. You can get through the suffering if you acknowledge what's comforting. I said acknowledge what is comforting. Look at verse 26. And I'm done, I promise. It says, likewise, the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities. That's what it says, Doc. For we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. He searches the hearts and knoweth what is in the mind of the Spirit, because he maketh intercession for the saints according to the will of God. And we know that all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Here it is. Paul says, if you're going to make it through your suffering, you have to have an understanding and acknowledge what's comforting you. He says, the Spirit helpeth us in our infirmities. Let me see the hands of those that are suffering again. Here's your chance to shout. The Spirit helpeth us in our infirmities. I like that word, helpeth. It's a long word in the Greek. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but it means to carry one's load. So when we can make it through our suffering because we don't even have to carry the load. The Spirit does. I said we can make it through our suffering because we don't have to carry the load. The Spirit does. Okay, happy y'all got it. Happy y'all trying to figure out what I'm saying. But here it is. When I was in college, I'm a junior or senior in college. I'm working out for the next season of basketball. I'm trying to do my best to have a better season than I've been having. So I'm on the track, conditioning, and I'm in the weight room lifting weights. And something happened. I haven't been able to lift this amount of weight all my life. All my life. I have never been able to lift this amount of weight. But one day in the weight room, Dorian, me and Dallas are in the weight room, and I put up this weight that I've never ever been able to put up before. So I put it up, and I was happy. You couldn't tell me a thing. I started walking around with a white beater on. I thought I was the biggest man in the world. I got on the phone and called my daddy and told him how much I lifted. He said, son, I was lifting that in the 9th grade.